elected, and that's why I have my former colleague and our current MP, my MP, Dagoretti, Honorable Beatrice Elachi. The meeting point between Mheshimiwa and the constituents primarily is at the time of election, when she was being elected, where she had to do a lot of campaign and then gets elected. Once she gets elected, she settles into her respective position and has to discharge her mandate in terms of representation and legislation. But there's always that question that used to arise: where then do we have the input of the public towards Mheshimiwa's work, which is legislation? And importantly, the core of her work being representation. Where is the voice of the people? That is where, in the constitution we have, public participation became a constitutional issue to be considered. Now, once you understand that philosophy, the idea is basically to try to bring on board the views and wishes of the people. Basically have a feel and say, what do people think about this? What then becomes is a leader or an institution, whether a legislative institution or even a government institution, because public participation is not just for the legislature, even the executive. And that's why you've seen the courts quashing so many administrative actions or pieces of legislation for lack of public participation, because they say, what is the input of the people? Now, let's now come to the process, which now becomes the point of debate. What is the threshold? And I think county governments offer the best lesson, so far so good. Compared to the national government, county governments are the front line when it comes to public participation. And the experience of county governments is that the reason why devolution was made was government to go closer to the people, where there is that nexus between the wishes of the people and the real-time governance they see, they feel. And that's where public participation has been more or less practiced and effected over a period of time. Every small step of the way, there must be those forums, whether you are doing community halls. And public participation is not just the aspect of one-on-one town hall meetings. It can go to the extent of people writing petitions, people writing memorandums. There are several aspects of it. So when it comes to threshold, I feel it's more of a moving target, and the courts help on matters interpretation. Let us get it clear. I think we keep blaming one arm against the other, yet we forget they are interdependent. The role of the court is to interpret the law that is already there. They don't legislate. So the court would say threshold in terms of the laws you've already done. And in this case, let me use this case, and that's why I wanted to disagree a bit with my senior Nyaribo.
Yes.
The idea of doing the public participation on Saturday came from the courts itself. Because they set the threshold. They said, if you do at the county level, it may not be representative enough. Why? The logistics of getting the voice of the county people under one. If, for example, you're doing in Nandi, how are you able to get 6 constituency people from the far ends all the way to Kapsabet to give their views within that period of time? Let me assume 1,000 people show up. Will they have reasonable time to give? Then the court saw it fit to decentralize and say, let us go at the constituency, because what is the threshold? An MP is the sole voter in parliament over this impeachment. So let this MP face his or her constituents, get their voice, then apply it. For me, that threshold meant at least you've spread it out more. Now, when it comes to question of timing, it is not done in isolation. It is done together with the threshold, or in accordance with the timeline set within which this process must conclude. And Parliament, it was time bound over a number of days. So you have to squeeze in between and try get as much as possible. Lastly, which is more important, when it comes to the Senate, this question of public participation coming to the fore, I've realized there's another argument that is still hanging in the sense that were people sensitized enough about the process? And that's why Beatrice Elachi said it was a yes and no question.